Hello, everyone. I know you're happy to see us. Everybody knows what it means when the master copy of the remarks hits the podium, right? We are on our way. So, hello, I'm Pam Greenwald. I'm the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for SAG-AFTRA. Welcome to the James Cagney Boardroom at SAG-AFTRA Plaza. And we appreciate you hanging around. Aaron, will you give me a high sign on audio? Let me know that camera is good and that our stream is up. Everything is good? Terrific. We're going to get started. So our principals are going to come out. They're going to make remarks. We have a Q&A, and then we will bring our committee out so that you will have an opportunity to get video B-roll and photos of the entire group, individuals as well. And once that has concluded, additional interviews, email us at news@sagaftra.org. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is my distinct honor to introduce to you SAG-AFTRA National President Fran Drescher and National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland. Hi, everyone.
All right, thank you all for being here as we head out into our Veterans Day holiday weekend. And though the purpose of this press conference is to address the new tentative agreement that will be impacting SAG-AFTRA's members, it's important that we acknowledge the military veterans who are honored this weekend. Many SAG-AFTRA members are veterans of the United States Armed Forces, and we thank you so much for your service and your commitment to defending our democracy. I'm Duncan Crabtree Ireland. I'm the National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator of SAG-AFTRA. Today, the union's national board voted to approve by 86% vote the tentative agreement that the negotiating committee reached with the AMPTP on Wednesday. This has been made possible by the membership's phenomenal solidarity and support for their negotiating committee, and we're exceedingly grateful for all of the support from the entertainment industry unions who have rallied behind us throughout this strike. This victory is everyone's victory. In this age of artificial intelligence technology potentially changing the entertainment landscape, protections for performers mean the preservation of tens of thousands of jobs: craft services, costumers, set builders, camera crews, drivers, gaffers, and so many, many more, as well as the preservation of countless small businesses that serve the entertainment community. I want to say a huge and very, very sincere thank you to SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher for her unstoppable commitment, her resolve, her dedication to serving the membership, and more than anything else, her courage. Her courage. I also want to include a special thanks to Chief Contracts Officer Ray Rodriguez for his partnership, and to our entire contracts team for their deep expertise about how our agreement terms affect the lives of SAG-AFTRA members. And on behalf of the whole union, I want to thank the more than 850 volunteer SAG-AFTRA strike captains who have kept our members safe during the 118 days of our strike. And I want to send my most sincere gratitude to our negotiating committee, who, without pay, worked tirelessly over many weekends and holidays over months to achieve this deal. I also want to thank the dedicated SAG-AFTRA staff who have been taking on countless extra hours to ensure our members receive the outcome that they deserve. And of course, our siblings at the WGA, IATSE, Teamsters and Basic Crafts, DGA, LIUNA, AFM, the California Labor Federation, the LA Federation of Labor, and the AFL-CIO, and so many others who stood by us from day one. We wouldn't be here without your support. And as far as talking about the AFL-CIO, we have to specifically thank President Liz Shuler and Secretary-Treasurer Fred Redmond of the AFL-CIO for rallying more than 12 million working Americans behind us. And I also want to thank the International Federation of Actors and our allies in the dozens of performer unions across the globe. We told you that this was a global fight, and you answered the call. From London to Uruguay, Mumbai, and beyond, you were there for SAG-AFTRA's members. Our members will soon vote on whether to ratify this new agreement. While the gains acquired in these new contracts will keep the motion picture industry sustainable as a profession for working class performers, they also serve as a reminder of what can be achieved through collective action and worker solidarity. What SAG-AFTRA members accomplished can and should be achieved by workers across all industries. Among the gains members will enjoy in this new contract cycle are: 1, more than $1 billion in new wages and benefit plan funding; a streaming participation bonus for performers who work on shows in streaming that become successful; minimum compensation increases that break the so-called industry pattern and help our members keep up with the harm that's been caused by inflation. And for the first time, consent, informed consent, and fair compensation guardrails will be in place around the use of artificial intelligence in our industry. We'll have increased pension and health caps that will channel more value into our benefit plans and funds, and we have critical new protections that are put in place for diverse communities. So in the coming weeks, SAG-AFTRA is going to hold informational meetings where we'll be sharing the details about this new contract and answering all of our members' questions. We look forward to sharing those specifics, and we're eager to celebrate this contract's ratification at the conclusion of the membership vote. But the work isn't going to be over at the conclusion of the vote. SAG-AFTRA members have made it clear that they want to leverage this unbelievable solidarity that they've fostered throughout 2023 to continue to be a force for good. And so in 2024, when IATSE, the AFM, and the Teamsters enter their negotiations, SAG-AFTRA members look forward to rallying behind their fight for their own fair contracts. And while SAG-AFTRA's new contract has protections around AI, legislators still need to make AI protections a priority, and intellectual property enforcement also a matter of public policy. So our members will be advocating for legislative efforts and will remain actively involved in the movement to protect all individuals' rights to their likeness. I've never been prouder of our SAG-AFTRA community and the impressive and unbelievable momentum that we've all generated together. Let's keep this going. I look forward to seeing what we can all accomplish together in the months ahead. So thank you very much, and I will turn the microphone over to SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher.
Thank you so much. Duncan, I just want to say that we started this journey together 2.5 years ago, both for the first time in the roles that we play as leaders in this amazing union. And I am so honored to ride shotgun with you. It is just been an unbelievable experience. And way back before we started negotiations, we had lunch with Carol Lombardini, who said to me, he is without a doubt the smartest person in the room always. She recognized that. And having never been in a negotiating room with him, I experienced it firsthand, the things that he caught and made a point of right there in the room, changed the direction of the negotiations over and over again. Working with him is just sublime, and his partner Ray and the staff and our negotiating committee has just been incredible. I feel like it's very appropriate that we are on the eve of Veterans Day, because that is a community of service that sacrifices much on behalf of the greater good. And so it is with inspiration that we were able to move forward to do what we needed to accomplish. I also want to pay homage to my dear parents who taught me that the working middle class is the backbone of America, and that we all had to honor and respect the labor force of America and to never cross a picket line. When I started out as a working actress, I was very proud to be a member of SAG. I would get a job, and then when I qualified, I would go on unemployment. But when I went on unemployment and I had to fill out the government forms, well, we never really fit into that because they would say, how far are you willing to travel to get to your job? And I'd write the ends of the earth. Or they'd say, what is, the least amount you are willing to accept for a salary? And I would write 0 or I would pay them. So they knew that I would rather be working than be on unemployment. And that was the God's honest truth, as I can honestly say for everybody in our union. But what comes with that is the realization that our employers know that too. And so the enticement to take advantage of that willingness to work prevails. And it is for that reason that this group of wonderful performers needs to have a union to protect them, because they might not say no to something. They rely on us to do that for them. And that's why many, many, many years ago, Bela Lugosi, in his Dracula costume, stood outside of the gates of the studio, passing pamphlets to actors saying, we are workers, we are American workers, and we need to unionize so that we can have the protections that are entitled to all workers in America. When I decided to run for president 2.5 years ago, and then more recently, it was because I felt a gratitude to my union, and I wanted to be of service too. And I felt like the union was spiraling into an abyss of partisanship that was dividing the members in a very dysfunctional and unhealthy way. And that is not the way to be strong as a union. It's antithetical to that. And we see it on a macro level in our nation too. When we fight each other because of partisanship, then somebody wins, but it's not us. And that is as old as time. The Romans invented it. It's called divide and conquer. So I wanted to come in, and much to the surprise of the people that voted, that didn't vote for me, and maybe also for the people that did vote for me, I felt like the only way to bring this union together was to enter without bias, without histrionics, but just to have my door open to every single one of the members so that I can hear what they had to say. And what came out of that was a beginning of trust. And it was what I call the Fran plan. And the secret sauce is time and patience. So when it was time to assemble the negotiating committee, I put together a group of people who were experienced people, very smart people, people that had been in all different negotiations in the past, people that were new with fresh ideas and understanding, people that had great passion for their communities. And even though 17 people vote, we became 44 who had a voice, and everyone spoke with great passion and conviction. And it took us always a very long time for everybody to fully appreciate what was happening in that community and why it was important. And for the first time, people who were otherwise marginalized in the past felt heard. And that was the great success of our negotiating committee. And so we started to come together as a family. People that were completely at odds from another time came together. And for me, the whole thing, the weight of it all was extremely stressful. Many times had to stay home on Zoom and, lead in my bathrobe because it was just so stressful. And going into the room with the AMPTP and everything, it was a lot. So if I could be home with my dog, it was helpful. And I want to thank, Jody and Linda and Tom, the vice chairs, for helping me, allowing me to do that. And I'm just so grateful for them. As you know, I'm a systems analyst daughter. And so very early on during our plenary, I recognized that there was a disconnect between the new streaming platform and the contract that we were working on. And I felt there was no way that anything about this contract was going to really make a significant difference in the lives of our members who were working on the streaming platform. The contract itself needed to change. And so we decided together that we needed to go into another pocket of revenue. For 35 days, like a broken record, we said we need to get into another pocket. We need to get new money from somewhere. And every single time we brought it up, the AMPTP said no. And finally, Duncan said, we're not taking this out of our proposal. We will hold it, but it isn't going anywhere. And finally, towards the end of the unprecedented extension that we gave to this negotiation, because we didn't want to leave any stone unturned, I said, we're going to go over your heads. We want to talk to your bosses. And Duncan and I went into a side room and we called several of the people who were CEOs of the AMPTP member body. And we explained to them that we needed another source of revenue because the people that were working in the streaming platforms didn't have the tail of earnings that they did in linear television. And it was making their lives very difficult to remain a working actor, and somehow they had to accommodate us. And we said to them then, it did not matter the mechanism, it didn't even matter the amount. What mattered was that we got into a new pocket. Well, they said no. And so we had to go on strike. But we're hoping that we would be able to keep talking. So on July 14th, our unprecedented amount of strike authorization votes was exercised, and our national board gave us the okay to move forward with the strike. And from July 14th to October 3rd, we never heard from the AMPTP. We went to the press and said, why? What are they doing? What are they waiting for? Are they trying to smoke us out? Well, honey, I quit smoking a long time ago. So I think that they realized that they were facing a new kind of leadership in me and Duncan. And we deflected their intimidation tactics. They had to acknowledge that we were demanding respect. And so the idea of a revenue share, we kept going back to it. Okay, you don't like the 2%. What about 1%? Okay, you don't think you can do that. It's a bridge too far. What about the 57-cent postage stamp concept where we get that per subscriber per year? No. But what happened was they needed to meet the moment. They heard that something had to be done or this was not going to end well. So they worked internally to come up with some kind of a modality that worked for all the different AMPTP members who were currently either fully entrenched in streaming or dabbling in streaming, but somehow they came together with a model that they offered to the WGA, which was accepted by them. We knew that that wasn't going to accomplish what we needed to accomplish, but as my Buddhist wisdom teaches me, the tallest of the bamboo trees are able to lean the farthest. And so I had to wrap my mind around the fact that we needed to make this work if we were going to get into another pocket. And I'm a girl from Flushing, so to me, money's money. It's just as green wherever it comes from. Hand it over. So when Duncan and Ray came up with the fund concept, which would allow us to use their mechanism to put the money into our fund so that we could distribute it with a wider net and benefit more, that was the thing that needed to happen. And, you know, AI was also a deal breaker. If we didn't get that package, then what are we doing? We're not really able to protect our members in the way that they needed to be protected. Because in the world of AI, 3 months is equivalent to a year. So if we didn't get those barricades, what would it be in 3 years or 2.5 years? It would be so far out of our grasp, we would always be chasing something, but never quite get it. So those two things at one of the last meetings that we were all in together was made important to them. And then Duncan also, in a sidebar with Carol, said, please listen carefully. We must get the fund and we must get the AI. And even though we were not talking about money anymore, at that point, the money had passed the $1 billion mark, the largest deal in our industry history. And they already broke pattern. And our lowest paid was getting the 11% minimum increase that we had wanted from the beginning. And the performers were offered 7%, which broke pattern. And over again, there were things that we were achieving. But the fund and the last piece of AI still was outstanding. So, and when they used the press and said that, oh, we gave them $1 billion. Oh. Oh, okay. I thought we were having an earthquake or something. I got scared. Anyway, you know, we were in a meeting with the AMPTP, and they were already leaking to the press, oh, it's over $1 billion. But he said, wait a minute, $500 million isn't being shown for. Where is it? Creative accounting? Funny money? Or as one of the CEOs said, phantom expenses. And we said, absolutely not. Every single dollar that we're negotiating has to be shown to benefit our members. You could just forget that right now, misters and ma'am. So that was something that made a big difference, because when we say we made a deal for $1.11 billion, that's real money that they had to yield to and finally agree, okay, we'll talk in your modality of how the money gets spent. So many things, you know, were developing and good things were happening, but still those two things were outstanding. We got things that we never got before, like performance capture is now in the contract, where it never was. New regulations for members when it comes to auditioning and interviews, because there was also it was like a wild thing that happened that just accelerated over COVID, with them asking our members to do everything when they have to have an audition and an interview. And so barricades had to be put on that, and new regulations had to be set. Over and over, blank pages filled with language. And then, you know, I had never been in this position before, but attacking the woman leader, trying to discredit her, making me out to be either overly aggressive or overly frivolous when they never ever talked about a Duncan in the room, was something that I had never quite experienced for its low-hanging fruit, and a ploy that I think should be beneath anyone. But I shared Buddhist wisdom with them in the room. I tried to put it into the context of the importance of what we were doing, the enormity of what we were discussing that didn't end in this room, but actually was going to impact all of humanity. And yes, I even had a little heart-shaped plushie toy that a little girl gave to me to give me confidence. And I said I was going to keep it with me through this whole thing, and in turn keep her with me too. But they weaponized all that to discredit me. And what I did was turn it around into a movement for women and girls, because I don't have to emulate male energy to lead. I can lead with intellect. I can lead with wisdom. I can lead with empathy. I can lead with morality. I can have a plushie toy with me, and I can lead, and I can still rock a red lip. So I turned that on their head and gave women an opportunity to see what leadership could look like if you just be who you are, your authentic person, without apology. The days turned into weeks, the weeks turned into months. One of our NetCom members passed away, and we all wept and prayed and shared stories that he was not going to make it all the way through. One of our family members was not going to take the rest of the journey with us. We became weary over time, as did our strike captains, as did our staff. It was extremely demanding, a lot of pressure. I saw cardiologists, pulmonologists, internists, you name it, everyone says it's stress. So, as the families do, our negotiating committee, sometimes we would laugh, sometimes we would hug, sometimes we would cry, sometimes we would yell. Each step of the way, we grew towards each other into what I am calling the nucleus of the golden age for SAG-AFTRA. But then there were things that they weren't budging on, things that we needed to try and get, but we weren't getting, things that it was becoming clear we're going to have to wait for the next contract. What about the respect package? Aston shouted. Rest periods. What about meal penalties? Ron Ostro said. What about motion capture and facial capture in addition to performance capture? Zeke challenged. When is audio description going to get in the contract? Nicole shouted. What about getting expert practitioners that can work on the members who have with different kinds of hair textures and skin tones, cried Natalia and Michelle and Avis. When are stunt people going to be recognized for their massive contributions and compensated, demanded Court and Jason. There's a lack of consideration by the industry at large that auditions are work in and of itself, and that too must be changed. We need to let performers do their job and have full focus on their audition and not have to be the casting director and the technician too. Meal penalties hadn't changed in 63 years, shouted Charlie. For months, we fought for it all, appealing to their sense of right and fair, but to no avail. This NetCom are very special because they come from different places. They come from different career paths and passions, but together, as volunteers, they all fought the righteous fight on behalf of 160,000 members. Back-channeling became the alternate universe, trying to reach the CEOs. A-listers, power agents, top lawyers intervened through Duncan and I. In the 11th hour, we still didn't have the fund or the complete AI package. Duncan had a sidebar with Carol. Jolie Fisher back-channeled for AI. And on the eve of the 7th, after I said to the negotiating committee, we're not going to vote tonight, as recommended to me by David Jolliffe, one of our senior negotiators, I got a call from Duncan, who said it looks like we will get both. But to get the fund, we had to agree to a 75-25 split, which meant that 75% of the money would go to the members who were on those shows, which met the criteria that the AMPTP set, which frankly is a thimble worth of shows on these platforms. But to meet that criteria, those shows in linear television would have definitely gone on to syndication. So they deserve to have the bonus. And the 25% that would be in the fund would be spread in a way that we could decide at a later time that we felt was fair to the people that are on the platforms. Again, I felt like, is this a win or a loss? But we're getting the money. We opened a new revenue stream. It's what we said in the beginning to them. It didn't matter the mechanism. It didn't matter the amount. What mattered was that we got into another pocket, and we did. So I had to once again be fluid and wrap my mind around that and not make the perfect the enemy of the good. I recalled what we said to the CEOs back in July, and I began to think about what the next steps would be. We open up this new stream of revenue. We write language on a page that was now blank. And maybe next time it won't be what shows get 20% of the audience. Maybe it'll be 10%, so more shows will qualify. Maybe it won't be 100%. Maybe it'll be 125%. So the people that are not in those shows can share more more for more. And suddenly I started to get my mojo back. I started to think and realize this is an ongoing living thing, a contract. And we're not over. We're only just beginning. But get it on the page, get that language, get into that pocket, and let's go, baby. So,
That was a woo.
one of my heroes is Frederick Douglass, and he said a quote that I say often, which is, power concedes nothing without demand. It never has, and it never will. So we hold in our hands a record-breaking contract that has broken new ground and pattern again and again and again. And I want to thank the AMPTP for recognizing the gravity of this historic and seminal negotiation and meeting the moment. And I can proudly say we began this journey, the largest entertainment union in the world, and we finish it the most powerful. Thank you very much.
Can we just do this thing? Yep. Okay. All right. So first of all, thank you so much, Fran. As usual, that was a barn burner of a set of remarks. We really appreciate it. And we've invited the negotiating committee and the vice chairs of the negotiating committee specifically to join us here at the podium while we share the specifics of what's been achieved in this revolutionary deal. So I want to say a specific thank you to Vice Chair Jody Long, to Vice Chair Linda Powell, and to Vice Chair Tom Kemp, who I think is not here with us today, but I'm sure is joining us virtually. And the rest of the negotiating committee that you can see behind us here. My sincerest thanks again to all of you for this most remarkable deal. Now let's talk for a moment about the specifics of the gains in this contract. The total package achieves more than $1 billion in new wages and benefit plan funding over the term of the contract. That includes the creation of a new fund to compensate performers for streaming exhibition that will be paid in addition to traditional residuals. Background actor wage increase of 11% effective immediately under the contract, along with an additional 4% increase effective July 1st of next year, and another 3.5% increase effective July 1st of 2025, meaning a two-step increase in the first year of this contract. There will also be a 7% general wage increase effective immediately under the contract, another 4% increase effective on July 1st of next year, and another 3.5% effective July 1st of 2025. By the way, during the first year of this contract, that compounds to a first-year increase of 11.28%. This package breaks the so-called industry pattern. That's it. We'll also be increasing the number of covered positions for background actors in the West Coast zones to finally equal the East Coast zones. This is a first. That change alone is projected to create 10,700 days, additional days of covered employment for background actors annually. Substantial improvements to relocation allowances for series performers, covering $5,000 per month for up to 6 months. In terms of maximum series relocation benefit, that's a 200% increase. New and very meaningful protections for the self-tape audition process, which are quite extensive, and we'll talk about those in the question and answer session, I'm sure. We'll have new terms to ensure that sets have proper hair and makeup services for all performers, including those who have diverse and textured hair and complexions. We have informed consent, and fair compensation for the creation and use of digital replicas of our members, whether living or deceased, whether created on set or licensed from a third party for use. We have increases to the benefit plan contribution caps for episodic work that we expect to generate more than $180 million additional dollars to the benefit plans over the term of this contract. We have language explicitly covering performance capture work for the first time. That's right. We have outsized gains to the traditional formulas for high-budget streaming video on-demand residuals, including substantial increases in the compensation for foreign exhibition and increases to the residual ceilings. We have new minimums established by applying television terms for high-budget, made-for-advertiser-supported video on-demand programming. We have, for the first time ever, a requirement to engage intimacy coordinators for scenes involving nudity or simulated sex. That's right, a long time coming. Right. We have new fixed residuals eligibility for stunt coordinators and the achievement of outsized increases for stunt coordinators working under flat deal minimums in television, bringing them closer to equivalency with the flat deal minimums for stunt coordinators working in theatrical motion pictures. We have substantial increases to compensation for Schedule F performers. We have the application of major role terms to high-budget SVOD and the first season of made-for-pay TV series. We have increased transparency that includes limitations, a separate writer, and a separate check requirement, and required higher compensation for anyone who's going to have advance payment of residuals for television and new media productions. We finally, yes, that's a big one. We have doubling pay for singers who dance and for dancers who sing, so that they will no longer be expected to do the other specialty without getting additional compensation for that. We are extremely proud of what we've advocated for and won in this new contract. And I personally am extremely proud of our president and our negotiating committee and our members who have stood strong to create this change. And for any of our members watching this right now, please keep an eye out for voting instructions from us, because this is going out for ratification to the members, and we are eager to have the opportunity to talk to you, to share this information with you so that you can cast an informed vote in our upcoming ratification ballot. So Pam, can I turn it back over to you? Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
We will do this shortly, and then we'll give you small shots. Cheryl, could you update here?
Someone lost a parking ticket. What does that mean, hold the podium?
We are going to get a set of shots with the podium here, and then he's going to take the podium out so we can do
How are we? I thought are we taking questions? Should we do that? If we're going to take questions, should we do that while we still have a mic and the podium here? Or
yeah, actually.
Okay. Or if we're not, that's fine, but I thought we were.
Duncan just reminded me about Q&A, so you guys were all about to get ripped off for your 30 minutes of Q&A. So, Fran and Duncan are happy to answer any questions you have. See the microphones in the aisles here. You'll need to use those so that you can be heard on camera. If you have a question, please line up.
Can't hear you. Mike.
No.
Union rules, I have to let union staff do. All right, do we have Mike? Great. Thank you. Thank you Fran and Duncan, for the presentation. Thank you, everybody. If either of you could, and I'm Jonathan Handel, writing for Puck. And if you could talk a little more about the AI guardrails and terms and provisions that you obtained, that would be interesting and helpful.
Sure. Well, so first of all, I guess what I would say is we started this negotiation with a very clear sense of what our members wanted and needed in terms of protections in AI, and that was informed consent and fair compensation. And so when we release the full description of this, what you'll see is that there is a requirement for informed consent for the creation of any kind of digital replica of a performer or background actor. There is a requirement that consent be obtained in the event there's going to be subsequent use of that digital replica, and with the sole exception of multi-picture deals, that consent can't be obtained at the front end. It has to be obtained at the time of use. Also, I want to note, when we talk about informed consent, what that means is the contract will require a reasonably specific description of the intended use of the digital replica, which means it can't just be a boilerplate sentence that says, I give away the rights to use this replica in perpetuity throughout the universe, et cetera, et cetera. It has to be a specific description of what the intended use is so that the performer can make an informed decision about whether they want to agree to that or not. In terms of compensation, there's a specific standard for that compensation. It depends upon what type of digital replica it is. For an employment-based digital replica, that standard is an equivalency to the amount of work that would have been done by the actor themselves if they had done that same type of work that the digital replica is being used for. In the case of a independently created digital replica, like one that's being licensed from a third party, let's say, for example, that's going to be a negotiable amount. And I do want to mention, because I made a specific comment about it in the press conference back on July 14th, standing right in this very spot, about the question of what happens with background actors and their right of consent to the use of digital replicas. And just so that our background community knows this contract protects background performers from any use of their digital replica without their consent. This contract assures background actors that the positions that are called for to be covered work under our contract, actual background actors are hired and they are not replaced with digital replicas for that work. And it also ensures that no use of a digital replica can be used to evade engagement and payment of a background actor under this contract. So our background actors are protected in our AI provisions. And the last thing I want to mention about the AI provisions, and Fran mentioned this, referenced this in her remarks, is up until the very end, we were engaged in a very serious fight with the companies over what was going to happen with respect to the use of generative AI to create what we call synthetic fake performers. And what the result of that is that, number one, we have a provision that requires the companies to get the consent of performers whose facial features are used as part of the creation of such a synthetic, even if it's more than one performer, even if it's only a part of those recognizable facial features. Number two, the companies are obligated to give us notice anytime that they use generative AI to create a synthetic fake performer, so we'll know about it. And number three, the union has the right to bargain over compensation on behalf of those people in the event that the companies create any kind of synthetic fake performer. So that was the piece that ultimately came together on the very last day, on day 118 of the strike. And with that piece added to everything else I mentioned, we feel that there is a robust and comprehensive set of protections for our members against the implementation of AI in the industry. It allows the industry to go forward. It does not block AI, but it makes sure that performers are protected, their rights to consent are protected, their rights to fair compensation, and their rights to employment are protected.
Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you.
All right, and we have Katie.
Krista, hi. Hi, Duncan. Good to see hi. Good to see you again. Congratulations. So I just wanted to check our math. So is it 10 of the 66 board members voted no? And can you kind of speak to their concerns?
Sure. Well, first of all, this may be a bit more governance nerd wisdom than anybody here wants, but our board works on a weighted voting system. So by the result, you cannot tell without knowing more how many people it actually reflects, because it's a weighted vote that represents the balance of membership around the country. And it's a system that's designed to ensure voices are present in the room, even regardless of what the number of members are in that particular geographic area. So I don't actually know off the top of my head what number of people that represents, but you can tell based on the percentage of the vote, that's the representation of the underlying membership that's reflected there. And I now have somehow forgotten the second part of your question.
Oh, just if you could kind of speak to maybe some of their concerns.
Well, I mean, I think that everyone, I mean, Fran even mentioned it in her remarks. You know, there are things that we wanted to get in this negotiation we weren't able to achieve. Now, having been the chief negotiator of a lot of other contracts before this one, I can tell you that is normal for any negotiation. I mean, that's what negotiation is about. It's a give and take process. It's not a process where one side comes in and just gets everything that's on their list. Having said that, we put forward, this committee standing behind me and our national board put forward the most aggressive proposal package I think we've ever seen in this contract, and we fought hard for everything in that package. We knew from day one we weren't going to get everything that we put on the table, but we also knew there were some things that we could not make a deal without, such as the AI protections we just talked about and some other things too. So I think there are probably some members of the board who feel that in certain areas they wanted to see more out of the result, or there was some specific piece that for them didn't quite hit the mark. But the fact of the matter is that we, I think, collectively feel that this deal was made at the moment it should have been made. It was made at the point of peak leverage for SAG-AFTRA and our members. It is a deal that reflects the absolute best that could be achieved in this negotiation, and it's a deal that serves our members well and that protects them from the things that they most need protection against. And so, but you know, this is a democracy, and in a democracy, everybody has the right to speak their mind, and everybody has a right to have their opinion, and that's fine. And so the majority, or in this case, the super majority, prevails.
And I told them to vote their heart, that this shouldn't be political, and no pressure with Drescher.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Duncan, I have two questions. One is very quick, which when are we going to see the ratification vote begin? How is it going to be conducted, and when will it end?
So the ratification vote will start on Tuesday. It will end, I believe, the first week of December. I don't have the exact date in my mind right now. And it will include web-based and live in-person meetings with our members to tell them all about the deal and answer any questions that they may have. Obviously, there'll be materials available online for our members. And that'll be the process. And so that's in accordance with our normal ratification process. The ballots are cast online through an electronic voting system, although there is an ability to request a paper ballot for people who aren't comfortable with that approach. And the time frame is the typical 21-day time frame that we use for our normal contract ratifications.
So this is like what you guys did for the strike authorization vote?
It is similar to it. Some of the process is a little different because as opposed to a vote on a strike authorization, this involves an extensive set of contract changes that need to be explained and both in writing and also through meetings. But it's a similar process, yeah.
The second question I have is, we've heard a lot of figures about this this new revenue stream, or as Fran called it, the new pocket. Numbers like $120 million over the 3-year contract. Can you give us some sense of the accuracy of that and break it down for us?
Sure. I mean, that is a roughly accurate number for a 3-year contract term. One of the things this is a completely new structure, both on the inbound money side and on the distribution side. And so that means our projections are going to have to be sort of stress tested. But we're confident that this will generate an overall number of around $40 million a year, part of which, as Fran said, will go to people who work on the shows that are used as the metric for the inbound money, and part of which will go into the fund for a wider distribution.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. Lacey. Hi.
Thank you, Pam. So can you speak to the significance of SAG-AFTRA breaking the AMPTP's pattern, particularly as it applies to other unions and their upcoming possible negotiations?
Sure. Do you want to do that, Fran? Or you want me to do it? Here.
I mean, I'm sure you'll have stuff to add. But, you know, part of the stress of this negotiation was feeling the weight of the people that were out of work since the writer's strike, and that included crew. And that was why Duncan pushed so heavily for us to do interim agreements to afford some of the journeyman performers and crew to have some outlets where they can find work. But while we were feeling the weight of people whose livelihoods were pretty much halted, and the stresses of being able to pay their bills was mounting, we were also hearing from their leadership that get the best deal you can get, because that's going to have a profound impact on our next negotiations. So when it comes to minimums, that's going to be something that's going to be a big part of their conversation. But also with AI, because in a synthetic world, you don't need hair and makeup people. You don't need drivers. You don't need set builders. And so for us to keep holding out for the best AI package that we could get was also going to spill over into what their futures were going to look like.
That's so true. And first, let me say, Lacey, thank you so much for all your support during the strike. Really means a lot to us. Second of all, let me just say that, you know, the pattern is something that a lot of us, myself included, have always felt was more of a negotiating tactic than a reality. And unfortunately, it's been a reality that has been enforced basically for many, many cycles, and not just in this union, but in other unions. And so I think, aside from the importance of getting wage increases that actually bring our members back from the ravages of inflation, which, by the way, this two-step increase does do over the course of the first year of this contract, ultimately resulting in a greater than 11% increase during that first year. But on top of that, it delivers the message that the pattern is only as strong as you let it be, and that if you are committed to doing something different than the pattern, you can do that. And that's a message not just for our union, that's a message for everybody. And I hope that that will help. I hope that will help our sibling unions in their negotiations in the coming year and beyond to feel like they can stand up to the idea of a pattern and they can fight for what their members need.
Thanks, Lacey. Margaret.
Thank you so much, Duncan and Fran. Couple questions. First off, can actors go back to work right now while waiting on the deal to be ratified? That's number one.
Yes, absolutely, they can, and in fact, some have already.
Wonderful. And if I may circle back to the national board's vote, came in at 86% in favor. This was delayed a couple of hours, this announcement this afternoon. So just kind of wondering if we can kind of read into the idea of some pushback from some of the members on this at all?
Go ahead. Yeah, of course.
You know, everybody's going to have to get hip to the fact that the secret sauce is time and patience. The AMPTP had to learn that lesson, and now you're experiencing it firsthand. But at the end of the day, we get the job done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Cynthia.
Hi, thank you for doing this. You mentioned that there was, especially toward the end, there was a lot of back channeling, a lot of conversations going on. Who in the industry was helpful to you in this process, outside of SAG, outside of the negotiating committee?
I don't think we should tell them.
You know, well, I guess we could respond to that first of all saying, Cynthia, who were your sources for all of the great articles that you all wrote?
I'll never tell.
I know you won't. I know you won't. For the same reasons, I don't think we want to call out the names of the people, but I will just say there were a number of people, including members of SAG-AFTRA, including people outside of our membership, but who are part of the industry, who were willing to invest their personal political capital, their time and their energy to try and help move this forward. And you know, some of that became public during the process. A lot of it did not. And ultimately, I think everyone who did that out of a genuine intention to try and help us make the right deal and bring the industry back to work. And so I guess what I would just say is they know who they are, and they know that they have our real appreciation for everything they did.
Can I ask one more? In terms of the CEOs that did eventually engage and were in the room from you, were there any bridges built? Do you feel like, you know, Fran or Duncan, did you feel like you made a connection that could be important for next time?
Well, you know, I have to say, in spite of the way the that there was some kind of extreme contentiousness in the room, that really wasn't the case. Sometimes we actually shared a laugh that had nothing to do with the negotiation, and it came as a great reprieve and relief for us all. Sometimes we would talk about, you know, the shows that we're all enjoying on the streaming platforms. I said to Ted, don't ever take off the Great British Baking Show. And he said, we never will. In fact, when we finally, you know, decided on that we were going to pass without objection in the room, I thought to myself, this must feel like what it feels like to get that cake plate. But I think that there was whatever was anticipated or expected, whatever they were used to, whatever they thought or we were expecting, I think ultimately we both, you know, they learned that we were not going to be pushovers, that we weren't able to be intimidated. Sometimes, you know, it's like, well, we're out of here. You know, and it's like, hey, dial it down. Time for a Buddhist wisdom.
Well, I think that gives you a lot of flavor.
Thanks, Cynthia.
A lot of flavor to that experience. But I would say also, yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it is, we should note that there were several of the meetings that we had by Zoom where more than just the so-called Gang of Four attended. We had several meetings where CEOs or their designees from every one of the major AMPTP companies were part of it, and that was appreciated as well. But I would say that it was really crucial to making this deal that the CEOs directly engaged. That's not meant as an aspersion to anyone, but it is a reality that their involvement was necessary to get us over the real hurdles that we faced. And I give them a lot of credit, especially the four of them who were willing to take the time out of their schedule to come in person, to spend a number of days here in our office, which is definitely a first, and to directly engage so that we could get this deal done ultimately. Would we have liked it to be done sooner? I know I would have, but I think their involvement ended up being essential to finding the path to this deal.
Thanks, Duncan. Jeremy?
I just wanted to see if you could elaborate on something that Fran mentioned about how at the 11th hour you weren't sure if you're going to have the full stream package you wanted, the full AI package you wanted, and then Duncan called and said that you're going to get it. Could you just elaborate a little bit more about what was in the final package that we're going to see that wasn't in what the studio said was their best, last, and final offer? What was the bridge between that on Saturday and then the final thing that you guys got?
Well, the two things were what Fran referenced. Number one was a real firm commitment to creating the fund and to putting money into it. And so that was something that was it was on the table, but in a non-committed sort of way prior to that moment. And our position was it had to be a firm commitment. And that's what it is now. It's a firm commitment. And the other piece was the last part of AI that I talked about in terms of addressing the future use of generative AI as it relates to synthetic fake performers. And our committee basically felt like that was absolutely essential to creating the wraparound protection that was needed for our members. And so those were the last two pieces that came together, the last AI piece literally on the last day in the final hours of the negotiations. So that was essential to making it happen.
And
Joe?
I just want to also add to that, you know, when we had the meeting with all of the AMPTP members where we were told that this is their best, last, final, at that meeting, I expressed that I think we have some deal breakers. So you have to understand, I know what those three words mean, but best, last, final comes when we resolve this, that, and the other.
Joe?
Hey, this might be the best last final question. One of the things that came up both during the writers' negotiations and during this as well, at least scuttlebutt of the challenges of negotiating with the AMPTP, because you have so many companies with differing models, agendas. Obviously, you've seen getting information from some is right out there in their 10Ks, and others not so much. I'm just wondering. I don't know if going forward, do you anticipate 3 years from now you'll still be negotiating with that big organization, or might it be done differently? And do you have a preference?
Well, I would just say I think our attention is really focused right now on getting this message out to our members, getting our members' questions answered, and getting our ratification vote in from our members so that we can all move forward with this contract. And the fact of the matter is, whether it's in this structure or any other structure, we will be here to fight for our members. We will be here to negotiate the best contracts for our members. You'll remember that just one cycle ago, Netflix wasn't part of the AMPTP for us, and we had a separate agreement with them, which we still have. So this industry is in a state of flux at the moment, but clearly these companies have hung together throughout the Writers Guild strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike. For whatever their differences are, they seem to have found a way to continue to operate in that structure. And I guess we will see what they ultimately choose to do. But from our perspective, at least from my perspective, I'm less concerned about what they choose to do and more concerned about what our members need us to accomplish. And as I hope it has been adequately proved this time around, we will do what it takes to make sure our members are treated fairly, with respect, and are protected.
Thanks, Duncan, Fran. Any other questions? If not, we're going to move to the photos, and Damon's coming back to take that pesky podium out. Thank you, guys. No worries. I jumped the gun because photos are my favorite, so I always want to, get the still people what they want. Yeah. Thank you, he says. Bear with us just one moment. And again, by way of follow-up, if you are looking for interviews in the days ahead, email us at news@sagaftra.org. And if you have follow-up questions tonight, same email. And look for the summary probably no later than Monday morning.
Oh, so it's not.
No, not the full summary. Which you're going to get what he gave today, press release and the key points. Coordinated press already planned. See Linda Dorr.
Oh, wait. I talked to Stephanie and Linda, and they said yes. But
Good.
I just saw that thing from the bathroom.
They've got, yeah. Yeah, kill the live stream. Thank you.
We just want to.
Thank you, everybody. We are concluding the live stream. Thank you for joining us online. And